Hello, people of YouTube. I have my friend Waylon Belding, right? That's the
That's
correct
that's
pronunciation.
that's my parent given name.
Yeah,
Yes.
I like never have said that name before in my whole life. Out of every time that I've hung out with you. So anyway, he's with me today after a long time. The reason is he's got a bit of land and he's building a yoga ashram on it and developing a community around it. So on his mind is the topic of community, society, and what the Vedic version of that is. So he wanted to discuss that that very topic, which is kind of known as Varnashrama.
Mhm.
So what is on your mind exactly, Mr. Belding?
What is on my mind?
Yeah,
Well, what Krishna
very nice.
serving Radharani, ne? Only.
Nice.
So, yeah, the ashram we're building, yeah, in Japan, it's getting bigger. So much support is coming. It's really great. And you know, Varnashram, which is the system we're talking about, the Vedic system. It's all about the society, how to make a society centered around devotion. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. How to recognize and acknowledge the body of Krishna, the body of God. Eh? So, living in Japan or any place in the world, actually, Varnashram doesn't really exist. Even in India, it doesn't really exist properly. It was kind of destroyed a long time ago. So I'm wondering, like, how can we really understand like devotional life, or how can we really make a proper connection if satsang or like the group around us, the community is so important. So how are we going to be able to do it by ourselves, or like stuck in our isolated economic little bubbles that we're all in? And so, right now I have a lot of karma yogis coming. We're really doing really good. It's expanding so great, and my own practice and everything has gotten more deep because of it. And I inquired to you, my sweet, my sweet bai, my senpai, how how can we somehow establish Varnashram in a Japanese society or in any society, considering the pressures of the Kali Yuga, the modern age, the corruption, considering everybody being heavily brainwashed by the economic sensibility.
Hmm.
Yeah, how can we really do it properly? So this is a good
Yeah.
discussion, I think.
All right. Yeah. I've seen people make pretty serious efforts to do that.
Mhm.
Um, ISKCON made a pretty large scale effort to do exactly that, with a lot of people really trying.
Mhm.
So I think so since I was a part of that, I think I might have something interesting to contribute or to say about this.
Exactly why I asked you.
Thank you. Um, I would like to maybe start the discussion by asking what's the real goal? Is the real goal to something social or something spiritual? What would you address? Like, how would you respond to that?
Ultimately, it's spiritual. It has to be. That's the prime. I mean, that's the whole point of the Varnashram, right? Society-wise, like I don't want to be big like Ishkan. There's no way. This sounds like a nightmare to me. To to try to deal. And Prabhupada was amazing to be able to do it, and he had a great Shaktipad to be able to do what he did. But considering my level, which is like just very low, I'm like the very bottom of the mountain. Whereas I hope I can only just try to follow the great ones. But yeah, this is of course our community, which is small, but it's getting bigger. But it has a capacity that I don't want to go too far. But there is a bit of a social, of course, because how do we interact together? How do we find each other's jobs? How do we fit together so that we don't eat each other? You
Right.
know?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. So I think that's something interesting. And then the other interesting point is you mentioned like, well, we live in Japan, but Varnashram doesn't really exist anywhere, even if it's in India. So that's
Mhm.
another interesting point. I think that's a part of the discussion. The first point is like, okay, what's actually the main focus? That's going to be an important part of, I think, how we would resolve or clarify. The other important part is what is plausible or what is feasible right now,
Mhm. Exactly.
because we don't really see. Varnashram anywhere.
Mm.
So
Like,
maybe that
yeah.
indicates that it's not feasible.
Yes. Well, given the yugas and at least the way the philosophy talks about everything, yes, that's what it would say.
Yeah.
But me always being stubborn as I always am and forever will be, I'm like, why not? Why can't we do something small? Why can't it be possible? For example, a big aspect of the Varnashram system in India, as it was the integration of the life with the cows. And then what we're seeing now with the modern degradation of the soil and the ecology and everything is that because the more modern farming practices have taken the animals out of the system, it's leading to the desertification of so many of our agricultural systems. So this is why, for example, in Japan, I really want to get the cow in so we can integrate the poop in with the fertilizer, let everything grow like magic. I know it works. So I think this is like one part of it. Eh?
Yeah.
The agricultural part, and I know that the land itself can provide our clothing and our food and everything, and then the idea of the simple life high thinking thing is really nice. I really like these ideas. And what else am I going to do for life? We have a life, we're breathing here. What else are we going to do?
Right. Right. Yeah. So to expand a little bit on my thoughts about the first topic, what the
Yeah,
goal is,
yeah.
I think if you study Varnashram, you realize that the goal of it is spirituality. And if you study yogas, bhakti yoga, jnana yoga, any yoga, you realize the goal of that is spirituality. But
Mhm.
there's more steps involved to get from Varnashram to spirituality than there is to go from bhakti yoga to spirituality. Right? There's basically 0 steps to go from bhakti yoga to spirituality, but there's several steps to go from your occupation and your farming and your income source to spirituality.
Mm.
So the more direct method may be more effective, especially since the more direct the direct methods usually include components of the other stuff that are absolutely required. So, for example, if you try to just practice bhakti yoga without really knowing what you're doing, without really knowing that it's happening, there will be the essential components of social life
Mhm.
involved in it without not as a separate affair, just as a, you know,
Yeah,
yeah.
natural.
So what I found is in being involved with people that were pretty obsessed with Varnashram and trying to do a Vedic social system is they got extremely distracted by it.
Mhm. Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they get so into like whether or not they have their cows are whatever the cow it is with the cow or whatever it is with the money source of income or whether you're a brahmin or a kshatriya, how they're going to figure out whether you're brahmin or kshatriya, that becomes their obsession, and it becomes like the end of the road for them is to try to figure out varnashram dharma, which is not really the point of varnashram dharma either.
For sure, for sure. But like even Krishna says he kind of in the Gita anyway, he organized it already. So I don't think we need to think about what caste we are. Already it's self-organizing.
Yeah, that's a great point.
People and what I've noticed with like my students and everything is that I don't have any I have a few experts that I'm paying to do like the really really important jobs. But otherwise everybody's just doing whatever. So and it's kind of self-organizing. Whoever kind of is attracted to the job and does it, it kind of naturally sorts itself out. I don't really need to think about it.
Huh, that's a
Yeah,
beautiful
that's what
point.
I've noticed. That's what I've noticed. Yeah.
That's nice. So it's happening naturally, and it should happen naturally, right? Because it's a natural system.
Yeah, 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 exactly. It's built in. Yeah. So that's my whole thing is like, okay, if it's built in, like how if it's built into being human and all humans are naturally if we're going towards turning towards Krishna, turning towards God, turning away from material life, doesn't mean of course we need material life to live. But if we're turning away, then hopefully we are self-organizing. But then also because as I said to you, I need my senpai. I need to have other people because right now I'm the acharya and I'm very small. I need to have more like acharyas around me to help because I recognize and my guru parampara is like a little different. Like it's a little different than for example yours. You come from the Hare Krishna line or the Rupa Nuga line. Ne? My line is more it's actually from it's Rudra's line actually. Eh? So, like my guru, and like I have him over here. Where is he? Over here.
This is
Eh?
why
And
your
his
skin
line.
is red.
That's why. That's because I'm in the sun so much.
Mhm.
You know, it's funny too. You're talking about the skin being red. In Japan, when they have the oni, who's got the red skin and the yellow hair, if I go out in the sun a lot, I will get red skin and yellow hair. I'll start to look like a Japanese demon.
That's good. Then you'll know your ashram right away in your Varna.
Then I'm, yeah, okay. I'm Asura, eh?
Mhm.
Great, yeah, definitely. Well, we're all kind of born in Asura families, aren't we?
I guess, yeah. No, I think that's really nice what's going on with your efforts. So it is happening naturally. I think it's a really good point that it should be a natural thing. I think that was the point. I think the point that I'm making is people artificialize it and make it such a stress and a distraction when really I the other point that I made was, is it feasible? Is it plausible?
Mm,
And I think that it actually is feasible. Um, but people need to, in general, know the essence of something versus the application of it.
mhm,
And this is true whether it's if you want to know what Jupiter and Sagittarius signifies, or if you want to know how to play baseball, or if you want to know how to do Varnashrama. This is like the main mantra for learning things well, is to learn the essence so that you can understand multiple applications of the essence and not
mhm,
just how it looks in one instance. I think
mhm,
people only really imagine, what did Varnashram look like in India 3,000 years ago? That is not going to work. There's no way that that's going to translate to Japan in 2022, India in 2022, or any place, anywhere else
right.
except India 3,000 years ago.
Mhm, mhm,
But if you understand what was the essence of the principles of the Varnashram that were manifesting in that particular way 3,000 years ago, then you can figure out how it could manifest today.
mhm.
So, what are those essences? That's a really important discussion to have.
Yeah, well, at least like according to like as I've kind of seen, like I said, I mentioned the cows and the agriculture. I think that somehow that's important because, like I said, the soil is degenerating. And what I've noticed even from the farming systems is that because all of the farmers here, they've taken all the animals out and they put machines on the land, the soil quality goes down and down, and they're using more chemical fertilizers. So that means to me, okay, we need to add the animals in. So that's why the cow was the center, because that was the best way to make the earth regenerate, to make the things grow, to make everything fertile without having to mess with it too much.
Hmm.
Right. So that was my first kind of
Yeah, so that's
realization.
that. Now you're talking about the Vaishya level.
Yeah. Yeah. I
So
guess that's.
that's the thing that all the Vaishyas are responsible for in society.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Important
But
thing.
even Shiva has a cow, nay? Even Krishna's got the cows, nay?
Yeah,
So it's kind of like everybody, at least I don't know if it's true, but I feel like even the Brahmanas back in the day, if they were renunciates, still they should have had a cow
they did.
somehow with them.
They had a cow.
They did. Everybody had a cow, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
So yeah, is it a Vaishya thing, or is it like that's in terms of commercial like production of milk and production of grains and everything maybe, but maybe everybody should have a little cow with them to help fertilize their little garden, you know?
yeah. Just like everybody has a house, right? But
Exactly, exactly.
but it's not like having the house is their focus. But it's the focus for the Vaishya. Like the Vaishya is Krishi Goraksha Vanikya.
Mm,
Vaishya is Karma Swabhavaja. The
mm,
Vaishya's main duty is to take care of the soil, Krishi.
mm,
By
mm,
taking care of the cow, go Krishi
mm.
Goraksha.
Production
And
protection.
then you can sell your products, Vanikya. So
Vanikya.
when you take care of a cow and land, then you'll get a lot
Mm,
of products. Like you said, it's stuff will grow. So you're gonna have more cabbage than you need. You're gonna have whatever you plant. You're gonna have more than you actually need. So then you
yeah.
can use that to trade for the other stuff that you didn't grow. That's the basic advice about Vaishyas. So the essence of that actually is the Vaishyas should be the, even if you're in a situation where you live in a city, is you're just surrounded by concrete and robots and computers, you can still do Vaishya Dharma, because
Mm,
the essence of it is you're the one who produces the resources
hmm.
that society uses for the rest of the stuff they do. So the most abstract resource is just cash.
For sure. Yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah.
even if you're not in an agricultural, ideally it would be agricultural because it's healthy and it would be good long term. But even if
Mhm.
you're if let's say at some point in the future there's some kind of destruction of the ecosystem, or if you just live in a city or something, you could still
nuclear
do Vaishya
wasteland
Dharma
or
by however you're producing cash. You're producing cash and you're making it flow in society. That's
Mhm.
the role that the Vaishya does.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
But even this, I
It's
think, is a bit off the essence, because that
yeah,
has
it
nothing
is.
to do with spirituality. That's all social.
True. It's true. It's true. That's why I think that that's why it's agricultural in that sense because like taking care of the earth, kind of, taking care of Bhumi somehow is connected with spirituality. Spiritual people naturally usually want to go mostly, not always, but they usually want to go to the earth and like be more in the nature
Yeah.
like this, ne?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And that, even for the average person, like even someone who has no idea of spirituality, like when they want to release themselves of stress, they usually go on a walk in the park or something,
Nee.
right? So, right? So that's some kind of the nature is somehow calling to our nature, the essence of who we are.
Yeah. Oh, I wanted to say something and I forgot it.
I wanted to say so many things.
Yeah.
Yeah, the like it's interesting. We're talking about Varnashram without actually ever even talking about the Varna or the ashram at
I
all.
wanted to say this.
Yeah. Yes.
I wanted to say, yeah, there are actually many reasons why spiritualists might gravitate towards certain kind of behavior that don't have to do with Varnashram.
Mm.
Because don't forget that spirituals actually see Varnashram is actually pertains to people who are karmis.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So it pertains to people who have certain destinies and fates, and they haven't learned how to exercise freedom of choice about that,
Mm.
or like they can't help but act in a certain way. Whereas
Mm.
when you're a spiritualist of some level of advancement, you get the ability to recognize your programming and your habits and everything, but recognize them and kind of like keep a distance from them and sometimes maybe even control them and not do. So yogis have the ability to transcend whatever varna and ashram this situation is. So, but yet they also get gravitated towards taking care of the earth, for example. Like you just will
Mm.
not find a spiritualist like pouring uranium into the earth, like harming the earth. You won't. And
Probably
but there's
not.
other reasons for it that are very interesting. Like you say Bhumi, but Bhumi, and earlier you said Radha. So like
Yeah.
spiritualists they see things really different. They see the way I take care of the earth is the way I take care of the goddess. The goddess is the one that I'm worshiping.
Exactly.
The cow is the goddess. So
Mm.
there may be other motivating factors that see that's what I was saying also before is you may not have to focus on Varnashram Dharma if you just focus on spirituality because you'll get the same results because this and actually the spirituality may be even more potent.
Well, it is. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's all I've been doing now, and it's for me like, yeah, it's that's all I've been doing because I have my studies that I know, but I'm like I don't even know how to approach this. I don't have any idea, so I just keep on doing my practice, my sadhana, and let it all. And I've noticed, of course, as I've become more purified and I've done more service, as I surrender more, it's the people coming more and the energy for everything's and the change is happening faster. So I'm just continuing, and I recognize that people who would pursue varnashram, it's another form of materialism, absolutely, because you know spiritual materialism, as they call it, right? Getting caught up in acquisition or name and fame through whatever means, even if it has the veneer of spirituality, it's still materialism and it's still greed. So yeah, to just try not to take credit for anything. Try to allow for it to happen and let people find their positions. That's all I'm doing so far, but
Yeah, you're
anyway,
doing great.
I'm doing as best I can. I don't know. Doing as best I can. It's
So you were mentioning other varnas and ashrams. You wanted to,
yeah, well, we could. Yeah, we could. Yeah,
yeah,
for sure. The Varna refers to the castes, the so-called castes.
yeah. I don't even know where that term comes from. I need to Google that. Where this English word came from, caste.
Caste? Yeah, well,
Yeah.
that's a caste is like in English. I think it has to do more with like the hierarchical structure of society.
Ah,
But like in Varn is not really about hierarchy so much. It's just about position based on one's natural occupation, for lack of a better word. I mean, using English, of course, is we're going to be failing at
Yeah.
every step. Okay, so you have brahmachari at the beginning, right?
Well, that's an ashram, not a varna.
Oh, sorry. Yes, Varna. Shudra is the base, ne?
Yeah.
The servants. Did Vedic society had no slaves, right? There was no slavery then.
There's no slavery, no. I mean, slavery is exploitive, right?
Exploitive, yeah. Because like most of the old world had a lot of slavery going on.
No, see, that's the beauty of Vedic society is that it's not exploitive. So, and
Yes.
that the motivation behind it, whatever you're doing, even if you're the guy who's sitting on the throne, you're not the you're not like squeezing your citizens to get you more money and stuff like that. You have a father, like you treat the citizens like a father. So the beauty of Vedic society is, although there's higher and lower people, it's similar to in a family how children are high, lower than parents. It doesn't mean that the parents are exploiting the kids. The parents are
True.
actually caring for the kids, and the kids are benefiting from the parents. So shooters are the people who don't themselves have particular ambitions. So they don't motivate to get out and go and do things.
Mm.
But they do have basic talents and skills. And so the people that have the ambitions, they utilize them.
Mm-hmm.
So like generally shooters will just be directly employed by Vaishyas.
Right.
And they just wind up as employees. What you could call a slave, basically we could call an employee.
Right.
It's basically the same thing.
Yeah.
But I think slavery indicates you get absolutely nothing. The slave gets absolutely no benefit out of it, and the slave master gets all the benefit. And that
Well,
certainly is not Vedic society.
now we have the term wage slave, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the shooters are the servants, the ones cleaning up all the things, doing all the basic jobs.
Well, they may not even be basic, but they're not really self-directing. They're being directed by other people. That's the essence of what a shooter. Shooter actually means to listen. So it's connected with the word Shravan. So
It comes from Shravan, right? Okay.
Yeah, so it's people who listen to orders are called Shudras. That's why the Puranas love, they glorify Shudras, because you should listen to the Vedas, and Shudras are very good at listening.
Mm.
So Shudras, the basic qualification for a Shudra is really, I don't have my own plan. I don't have my own idea.
Mm.
I can still work and I can do stuff, but I need somebody to tell me what to do. If you're like that, then that's the quality of a Shudra. And it's not inferior. You don't have to feel ashamed of that or something. You'll be useful to society because we need tons of those people.
That's how the world works. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But then in this term, then Vaishyas are more like the managers, then the economic managers. Yeah. Yeah.
And so they have big projects. Like you have a big project. That's why you can take all these people and give them something to do.
Mm-hmm.
So Vaishyas generally have these big projects because they have bigger plans. And that's why they work really well with shooters and they just employ them.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And then, of course, the Kshatriya, the kings, like the organizers, and the fighters, the warriors. These are the ones that are these are the only sanctioned meat eaters, right? Basically.
I've heard that.
Yeah, that's what, I guess that's what I
I've
understand.
also heard that shooters really don't have to follow any rules whatsoever. Yeah, like it's not really that important for a shooter to follow any particular rules, so they could probably also do whatever. Or they have very, very lax rules. The rules for shooters are very lax. Like the amount of education that a shooter needs is minimal. The amount of cleanliness that a shooter needs is minimal because their activities are basic.
Mm.
The thing about Kshatriyas that I find humorous and interesting and important is they have to keep the Vaishyas in line. So basically, the Shudras work under the Vaishyas, and the Vaishyas have to work under the Kshatriyas. Because otherwise, Vaishyas have a lot of ambition.
Too much ambition, yes.
That's why they have these big projects. But ambition is a dangerous thing.
Yes, it needs to be regulated.
Because it will lead to independence and division amongst people. So the Kshatriyas are the guys who make sure that everybody keeps working together. And that nobody starts, benefiting at the expense of others. So they're the guys that they span this weird spectrum from warrior to philosopher. Because they have a lot of philosophy and a sense of morality. Morality is a super important thing for a Kshatriya. So important. Like one of the key principles for a Kshatriya is never break a promise.
Right.
So they will never break a promise. They will never tell a lie. Even if it means that they'll die right on the spot. Like they'll tell you how to kill them. They can't tell a lie. So
how far we've come in this age, eh? Like,
Yeah, most people like can't even tell the truth. And the leaders, there's no more leaders. You'll find actually that there's no more actual effective brahmanas. There's no more effective leaders either, but there are still a lot of effective vaishyas.
mhm, interesting.
But anyway, what I find humorous about the kshatriyas is that without them, the vaishyas, without them, you get unrestricted capitalism.
Exactly. Yeah.
So vaishyas are an interesting thing. They span these people that are intelligent but also dominant.
Mm,
So you get a mixture of warriors but educated.
mm,
So you'll get all kinds of people, like varying from people that want to be policemen to people who want to be lawyers. It's kind of is like kind of an upper end kshatriya,
mm,
whereas policeman is kind of like a lower end kshatriya, more
mm.
physically oriented, more simple.
All the way up to a king or a leader.
Yeah,
Yeah. And then also they're supposed to also always they're supposed to defer to the Brahmana, eh?
yeah,
Kshatriya. That's the proper job. They're supposed to protect and defer and get wisdom and advice from the Brahmana,
yeah,
who's supposed to be a renunciate,
right,
completely renunciate, and let go of everything,
right.
and just dedicate themselves to devotion, study.
Yeah,
Like this, ne? Sadhu, sadhu.
because if they have vested, the thing about one of the interesting things from history about brahmanas that's interesting is if you ever want to insult a brahmana, you imply that they're getting a salary from somebody,
Ah, that's yeah, that is
or you
interesting.
imply that they're being sponsored by somebody or something.
Hmm.
So it was very tricky for the brahmanas that would go to become the king's ministers,
Hmm.
because they were dealing with very dangerous circumstances where they were more or less living in the palace and being sponsored by the king. But you'll find that they actually don't live in the palace. They would actually live in a small, humble house near the palace. And you would find that they would say things to the king that the king didn't like.
Hmm.
And so the idea of the Brahmana is they don't have any vested interests, they don't have bias, they are just scientists, they're just philosophers, they just study things, they know things. So they will just give you impartial advice that's the best for everybody.
So they'll speak truth, basically
Yeah.
only truth. And the truth is often and almost always uncomfortable, especially in the modern age. Truth will make everybody cringe,
Yeah.
even though it's the best medicine. Yeah. So yeah, that's the Varn. That's the Varna. There's so
Yeah.
many subcategories in there. I know there's a lot of subcategories in there, from all the way up to like a, I don't know, Uttama Brahman, all the way to a Chandala, like a dog eater at the bottom, I guess.
Yeah, then there's also names for types of people that are outside of the Varna system. I forget what is that called? Avarna. It's called the Avarnis. They are different types of people that are not in the civilized society, like mlechas.
Let's just yeah. Hmm.
The basic word for a foreigner is a mlecha. So
Yeah.
they're human, but they don't they're not a part of the civilization.
I remember when I first went to India, and then I asked the guy. I was like, "So, I wasn't born in your system. So what caste am I?" And he said, "Oh, you're a god because when you come, you bring money."
That's so practical.
Yeah, he was a Vaishya, of course. This guy, some shopkeeper. Yeah. So yeah, okay. So we were born basically as demons, I guess,
Well,
according
I
to
don't know.
this.
That's a nice way to say it, but also I think it's an interesting conversation too. Like on one side we're saying there's no brahmanas anymore, there's no chai, but on the other side we're saying these are four natural things that are always in humans.
Mhm.
So actually there are brahmanas. I mean, people like me and you, most of our life is dedicated to studying and teaching.
Always,
Most,
always. Yeah.
right? So, and then there's other people that most of their life is dedicated to business and
Mhm.
marketing and sales. And there's other people where most of their life is somewhere in between that, where they're interested in like organizing people.
Hmm.
And then there's certainly a whole bunch of people that they're not really into anything. They're just living, and so they work for other people. So they really, no matter what you do see, brahmanas, kshatriyas, Vaishyas and Shudras always throughout society. But when we say something like there's no more Brahmanas, it means there's no more ideal.
Mm.
There's no more ideal thing that is therefore empowered to like be active, have an effect, an impact on society. And the Brahmanas, they've been in decline since Satya Yuga. And it's actually related to Rudra. Do you know that story?
Uh, is this the which story are you referring
The
to?
story with Rudra and Daksha?
Oh, of course, yeah, Virabhadra, ne?
Yeah.
Yes. They were saying that, yeah, he got cursed. His line got cursed, right?
Yeah.
And then his line also cursed them.
Yeah.
And
So
yeah, I remember
Rudra's
this.
followers cursed Brahmanas
Right,
because the
right.
Brahmanas had previously cursed Rudra's followers for
Yes,
ridiculous reasons. It was actually the Brahmanas that were at fault. But
yes.
as a result of that, the Brahmanas generally lose their clarity. But
Hmm.
the huge problem with that is, since the Brahmanas are the guys who make the Kshatriyas function effectively, and since the Kshatriyas are the ones who keep the Vaishyas in line, and since the Vaishyas are the ones who employ the Shudras, if you screw up the Brahmanas, you screw up everything.
Right.
So as the Brahmanas decline, when they become impotent, which is at the beginning of the second yuga, then the Kshatriyas start to fall apart. And then at the beginning of the third yuga, the Kshatriyas begin to become impotent, which is when the Vaishyas start to fall apart.
Hmm.
And then at the beginning of the fourth yuga, or I may have gotten it wrong. The Brahminical decline begins at the beginning of the second yuga because it's Kali Yuga. You'll see the Vaishyas in the beginning of Kali Yuga. The Vaishyas are still active, but
Right.
they lose themselves over the course of Kali Yuga, so that you only have just people without direction.
And then we already see degeneration happening in all the systems, like big
Yeah,
time now. Even yeah. The this also relates to that one story about Indra also dressing up as the Brahmana, right?
yeah,
During the horse sacrifice, right?
yeah,
Of Yudhishthira, right? This
yeah. He
also
dressed
has
as a renunciate. Actually, he dressed as a sannyasi.
yeah, right. And he defames the sannyasins from then on, yeah.
So that relates. So you want to talk about the ashrams, and because I have to wrap it up pretty soon.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so ashrams, this is phases of life now, right? From brahmachari, from the celibate study or learning guy who just gets his upanya samskar, ne?
Mm.
Yeah, and then goes to study in the shala and the Gokul, right? Studies his occupation, studies his thing, and from then, so that's important. Brahmacharya ashram, but it's interesting also in yoga, the brahmacharya also becomes a code of conduct.
Yeah,
I always like that. They're both connected. Yes, how to see everything as spiritual and not to exploit anyone or anything based on one's flesh or not to reduce the value of one's character to their beauty or booty, right?
bhuti. That's funny. That's a Sanskrit word too.
Yeah, booty, yeah, so it is, yes. And yes, so that's the first one, brahmachari. Anything you want to say about the brahmacharis?
Yeah, basically the essence of it is this is where you're a student when you're a
Right.
student. And what I think is also interesting about ashrams and how they relate with varnas, you're basically one varna. Your varna doesn't change in your birth. It doesn't change, but your ashrams will change over the course of your life. So, and
This is interesting
every
too on this.
yeah.
Before you go further about you saying that, because I remember there's a story in the Rig Veda about a potter whose wife was a corn cobbler, and then they had a brahmana as a son.
Oh, that's a great story.
Yes, it's in the Rig Veda. So this was showing how even before there was not about
Yeah,
the genealogy. There was a
yeah,
way to go based on one's natural temperament.
yeah. Although, like usually, the child of
Usually.
two Shudras will probably be brought up and etc. be a Shudra, but there's certainly exceptions. So you shouldn't base it. The your Varna is about you, not about your parents.
Right.
Often, most of the time, it will be so similar that it's not going to be different, but still, the Varna is about you. So if it is different, that's fine.
Mm.
Another example is Parshuram, who's a Brahmana's child, but he's acting as a Kshatriya.
Right. He's a
Uh, but just so people know, with the Varnas and the ashrams, every Varna will do all four ashrams, but not in
right,
the same way. Each one
right.
has a different version of how they adopt it. Like
Right.
the Brahmana is described as a lifelong brahmachari.
Hmm.
So brahmachari doesn't mean celibacy. Brahmachari means students. When you're a student, then you're not partying. You're studying, right? So that's why it implies sense control, celibacy, etc. But it doesn't actually mean sense control, celibacy. It means studentship.
It implies those things, yeah.
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 And then the Shudra, they also do their studies, but not very long. They just have to have vocational training. So Shudras get vocational training and then they go work, which is basically what we're doing these days. And then, but Brahmanas, they do all this kind of philosophy. They have to learn everything. Like Brahmanas learn everything and more.
Yeah.
And then
They don't stop.
Vaishyas, yeah. Vaishyas have a lot to learn. They have to learn economics, so they have more extended brahmacharya. Kshatriyas have a lot to learn. They have to learn politics and social stuff. Yeah, and then that transitions into the second ashram, which is?
Grihastha.
Yes.
Yes. This is householder. This is basically where you and I are. Yeah. Managing the family, taking care of the family, supporting the family, doing everything we can to keep our family fed, eaten, and as pious as possible.
Did you notice, have you ever noticed that there's like a resonance between the ashrams and the varnas? So for example, Grihastha and Vaishya, they resonate. It's kind of like a similar thing. So Vaishya will have the most interest in the Grihastha ashram, and the most of their efforts will be in that phase of life. Brahmachari, it resonates with Shudra because Shudras listen, and the Brahmachari listens to the teacher and learns. And then the other one, Kshatriya, that resonates with the later on in life, the person that's very independent. They leave and they start being self-governing.
So that's a Vanaprastha, right?
Yeah.
The third one. This is an interesting one. In this one, this is when usually the father and the mother go off into the forest, right?
Right.
And then they prepare each other for to prepare their sadhana and prepare their devotional life, and especially the woman prepares the man for his eventual trip into the sannyasin.
Yeah.
In the traditional system, once the last one is the sannyasin, doesn't the woman return back to the family, if I remember correctly?
She can if she wants.
She can if she wants, but if she can also go off if she wants.
Yeah. So, for example, you'll hear like in the story of Puranjana, in the tale of Puranjana, he meets a woman who's by herself in the forest, and he asks her if she's a sadhu, because that's one possibility.
Yes, right. Yeah, I like the idea of the woman coming back to the family though, also because this shows the matriarch, because in traditional society, even in Japanese society, the women were the one that ran and organized society. Like from the Jomon time, it was the Heiko period. This is like the women were the one, and I can see also when I'm dealing with people, because women are still going through their menstrual cycle, they always go through a really kind of a turbulent point every month. But the woman who doesn't have this, who's already post-menstrual, she can govern these women very well. She can keep them all in line much better than any man can. So having like the elder kind of matriarch figure seems important somehow.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah. These are just things I just notice about life that conjunct to the study. So the Vanaprastha time, usually like you have some kind of ashram in the forest, right? Or some kind of dwelling.
Yeah, you can even have that in what's called sannyas. Like Shudra sannyas they still live in a house. It's called kutichak. So there's four types of each ashram really based on each varna. So Shudras will also be able to do sannyas, but it won't really look like sannyas. It'll look like Varnaprastha.
Oh, okay. Interesting. I didn't know this one. Yeah, so the sannyas, like some of the stories I've heard of sannyas is like, the man is not supposed to stay in any one place for more than 3 days.
There's all those gradations, right? From Kutichak, Bahudak, Paribrajak, and Paramahamsa are the 4 stages for sannyas. So Paramahamsa, forget 3 days. You're not supposed to stay anywhere.
Just keep going.
You just always move. Yeah.
And prepare for death.
Yeah, well, you're going to die soon anyway. If you keep moving, you're not going to be very healthy.
Right. And
I don't
then
know.
for the
Maybe I'm wrong, because
Paramahansa,
you may actually become very healthy because of having so much vigor. I don't know.
yeah. For a
That kind of
Paramahansa also, like some people, like some Brahmanas get captured and an ashram forms around them, right? The people capture them basically. This is in my Guru's tradition, they talked about this. How a sannyasin who is great, once you've reached the sannyasin ashram, if you're really great, you get captured and then people won't let you go and you become like a guru, some kind of acharya.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But I need to finish up. But there's one thing that I think we didn't get to say yet.
A lot we didn't get to say yet. We should do
Yeah.
a part two.
Yeah, we should. I think there's one really important thing that I don't want to finish today's thing without saying, like to me, what the real beauty of the Vedic society is.
There's so many beauty things, but tell me.
What I think is the most beautiful thing about it is, these days we have an idea of not shaming this or not shaming that, or right.
Hmm.
That was the Vedic ideal.
Hmm.
The Vedic ideal was that we don't really care who you are
Right.
or what you are.
Right.
We just want you to do something productive for society.
Hmm.
So it's really interesting because it's double edged. It's not just we don't care who you are, go do whatever the hell you want. It has the concept of you can be whoever you want to be. Really, we don't care.
Hmm.
But do it in a way that benefits society.
Hmm.
And that's what the Varnashram system is basically all about. When they say, well, there's these four basic types of people, what they're saying is let people be different. Not everybody is supposed to study the Vedas all day long. And just because you can't study the Vedas all day long doesn't mean that you're worthless. We still like you. You're still important to society. You just go ahead and you do you, and we need you.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. But just remember that, and this is how we need you. We need you to contribute to society. Go do something. Go work on a project with a Vaishya and make sure that Vaishya is working with a Kshatriya who is being directed by a Brahmana.
Hmm.
Then you're basically getting the effect as if you were studying the Vedas, because practically speaking, you're being directed by somebody who studied the Vedas.
Right. No. That's that's beautiful thing about the Vedic thing is it's not like some kind of dogmatic religion judging everybody. It never was. It always was open-minded, and that's why there's so many different variations of spiritual practice, and there's so many different variations of language and culture in India, and that's really the beauty of it. It's absolutely the beauty of it. That's correct.
Very
Yeah.
nice. It was a great time talking with you.
It's been too long. Then we do again soon, I hope.
Yeah, we have to do that.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Send my greetings to everybody there.
Hari Om.